All right, welcome to the Conviction Fiction. Now, with this show, when I first thought about doing this episode, the phrase that came to mind came from the last, which was structured chaos. Now, it sounds like a contradiction, but it isn't. Structure is supposed to be neat, predictable, orderly. Chaos is the opposite, like messy, unpredictable, disruptive. But if you've ever spent time behind bars, you know that those two things somehow coexist every single day. Prison life looks like structure from the outside, same count times, the same meal trays, the same uniforms. Yet inside those walls, chaos constantly breaks through. Lockdowns, surprise shakedowns, unit transfers, canceled visits, violence. It's a system that pretends to run on rules, but really runs on unpredictability. And surviving it takes discipline. Not the kind that comes from a sergeant barking orders at you, but the kind that comes from within. On the outside, in civilian life, we like to believe we've escaped that, but have we really? Out here, we got jobs, bills, schedules, alarms, and deadlines. We've also got broke down cars, sick kids, layoffs, and a world that can turn upside down overnight. The truth is, chaos doesn't disappear when you walk out of prison gates. It just wears different clothes. So, in this episode, I want to explore how discipline works in both worlds. I'll break it down into about maybe 4 to 5 parts. First, we're going to talk about the illusion of order. We're going to break that down, how structure and chaos collide behind bars and on the outside. Then we'll get into routine as a survival mechanism. Why routine is more than just habit, it's life saving inside and grounding on the outside. We'll also pit two forces against each other, and that's self discipline versus external discipline. Because we need to know the difference between what's forced on you and what you choose. And adapting to the unexpected is one of those skills that we have honed and learned. And we'll talk about how unpredictability shapes discipline both behind bars and in freedom. Now, this brings us to the last topic that I aim to cover. It's a pretty short show, but that's the bridge between the two worlds, like what lessons carry over and how the discipline becomes the real measure of freedom. This isn't a conversation about prison. It's a conversation about life because whether you're locked in the cell or stuck in traffic, the questions remain the same. How do you build order in the middle of chaos? Let's go and get into the conviction fiction. All right, welcome to back to the conviction fiction. I'm your host, Antoine Rivers, and from the outside, prison always looks like the definition of structure, right? Every day scheduled down to the minute. You got your wake up calls, you got your counts, you got meal times, you got chow hall. That's what chow time. You got the yard, you got lights out. Officers walk the tiers with clipboards, and people assume that the order you see is the order you live. But if you've ever been on the inside, you know the schedule is only half the story. Yes, there's some structure to it, but that structure is constantly being disrupted by chaos. A fight may break out and the whole yard goes on lockdown. A correctional officer doesn't show up, and now they're understaffed, so everybody on lockdown, or maybe a class is canceled. Um, a rumor can be spread, and suddenly half the dorm is on edge waiting for something to happen. Eerily quiet time. Now, what looks like order from the outside is really controlled disorder. A system built to look organized while being unpredictable at its very core. So this is where discipline comes in, like discipline that you really have to master because you can't control the institution. You can't control the officers, the lockdowns, the transfers, but you can control yourself. That control, um, what you decide to do with your time, your thoughts, and your actions is the real discipline. Now, on the conviction fiction, we talk about success stories and what it takes to stay out, stay free to avoid recidivism, because civilian life isn't all that different from what I just described. We live by alarms, we live by calendars and schedules. If we choose to, we show up to work. We drop off the kids at school every day, pay bills, and file taxes. From the outside, it looks neat, but step a little bit closer and you can see the cracks. The boss calls with an emergency, right? Or your child gets sick the night before a big presentation, or you wake up one morning and your car won't start and you're already running late. The illusion of order gives way to the reality of chaos. The key parallel here is that in both prison and civilian life, discipline isn't about the external schedule. That's just the window dressing. Discipline is about what you do when the schedule falls apart. In prison, it's choosing to stay calm when the unit locks down unexpectedly. Or on the outside, it's choosing to keep your commitments even when life throws distractions in your path. Now, the illusion is that structure equals control. And that reality is, chaos is always waiting around the corner. The discipline you build in those moments when control slips through your fingers is what determines who you become. Okay. Now, we sometimes have um, mechanisms set up within ourselves, like where routine becomes survival. Because when you're inside, routine isn't just a habit, it is survival. The days stretch out endlessly, and without some kind of rhythm, you can lose yourself. I don't just mean boredom, I mean losing your sense of time, your sense of purpose, and even your sense of self. Prison has a way of erasing individuality. Everyone wears the same uniform, eats the same food, walks the same yard. If you let it, the system will decide who you are. That's why so many men and women behind bars create personal routines. For me, it might have been something like making them a bed immediately after waking up, brushing my teeth, going to knock out a set of push-ups, or if the yard is open, go get my workout on, and then come back in, shower, read a few pages before chow. Um, some brothers wrote letters every morning, rain or shine, it don't matter, just gonna write a letter. Others time their workouts to the sound of the CO's keys jangling on the tier, right? The point wasn't what you did, it was that you did it consistently, no matter what chaos swirled around you. Now, routine can become a form of control in a place designed to strip control away. It gives you ownership over at least one slice of your day. And in prison, that ownership can mean the difference between growth and stagnation. Without it, time starts to own you. You start to drift. You wait for something to happen instead of making something happen. Waiting in prison is dangerous because waiting can turn into wasting. Now, on the outside, routine plays a different role in the civilian life that you're going to get used to. You're not forced to create it. You have the freedom to choose. You can set your alarm early or you can set it late. You can sleep in if you want to. You can meal prep or you can just go to fast food every day. You can exercise daily or not even break a sweat walking the steps. Out here, skipping your routine doesn't always come with immediate consequence. One of those creep up on you cycles, right? No officers writing you up for oversleeping. No counselors checking your journal to see if you've done the work, if you wrote complete sentences or answered the question. But the danger is quieter because, but it's just as real. When you abandon discipline in civilian life, you slip into comfort, procrastination, and eventually chaos of another kind. This contrast matters because it shows where discipline really comes from, and that's inside, right? Now, When you're locked up, routine is imposed by necessity. You either create it or you drown in the sameness every day. Out here, routine is imposed by a word that we love to say on here. This podcast, that word is responsibility. Routine is imposed by responsibility when you're in the free world. You either choose it or you risk drifting into a life of distraction where days blur into weeks and you wonder why nothing changed. But here's the thing, the skills are transferable. I know brothers and sisters who came home and carried those prison routines with them, up at 5 o'clock, working out, journaling, sticking to a schedule. And you can see the difference. They treat time as something precious, something that can't be wasted. They're less likely to fold under pressure because they've already practiced discipline in the most harshest conditions. Now, on the flip side, I've seen what happens when someone comes home and they abandon the habits they built inside. They tell themselves, "Well, I'm free now. I don't need to do all that." And at first, it feels good. You can sleep in, eat whatever you want to, and drift through the days. But eventually, the lack of discipline catches up. Bills start to pile up. Um, Relationships start to fall apart. Job opportunities slip away. Families start to get frustrated with you. And the same chaos that haunted them inside finds them again, but this time it's in a different form. Okay? Because routine is more than survival. It's a declaration. It's basically saying, I will not let this system define me. On the outside, it says, I will not let this freedom destroy me. Now, in both places, it is the bridge between who you are today and who you want to become tomorrow. So, whether you're behind bars or walking free, the lesson is the same. Don't wait for life to hand you order. Create it yourself. And once you built it, guard it like it's your lifeline, because in many ways, it is. Now, let's talk about the self discipline needed versus the external discipline that kind of got put on us, right? So, one of the hardest lessons I had to learn behind walls was the difference between discipline that's enforced and discipline that's chosen. Now, on the surface, prison looked like it has discipline built into every inch of it. The strict rules, strict schedules, strict consequences. But when you peel it back, you kind of realize that most of that discipline is external. It comes from the CEO or the correctional officer, CO, not the CEO. I guess it's the CEO, especially if you're in one of those private prisons. But it comes from the CEO telling you to line up. It comes from the warden or the warden or the sergeant or the captain or whoever announcing that it's lockdown. It comes from the threat of losing privileges, like going to a store call if you step out of line, right? Or if you are in a fight, something like that, then you got to go to the hole. So that kind of discipline shapes your body, but not necessarily your character. You can walk in perfect formation, keep your uniform clean, and follow the schedule to a T, and still be completely undisciplined inside. Why is that? Well, I'm glad you asked me, because external discipline isn't the same as self discipline. External discipline can keep you from getting written up. Self discipline keeps you from losing yourself in the first place. Now, I can remember people who looked like they had it together on the surface. They never got caught slipping. They followed every rule, but when lockdown came, when commissary got canceled, or when they were transferred to a new unit, they just completely fell apart, right? And this was because their discipline wasn't truly theirs. It was borrowed from the system. They were living off of that external discipline. And the moment the system shifted, they had nothing to hold on to. Then there were others that were quiet, focused, maybe not the loudest in the room, who had built something deeper. They woke up early to read. They worked out even when the yard was closed. Even doing push-ups or jumping jacks, burpees, and anything else they could do in the cell. They managed their anger, chose their battles, and refused to let the chaos around them dictate their actions. No officer told them to do that. No rule book required it. They came from within. That's the kind of discipline that we're going to have if we're going to be successful, or for the ones that have been on the show, this is the discipline that they exercise, self-discipline. And it's the kind that lasts when you walk out of the gate, right? When you leave prison, you got self-discipline. They can't take that away from you. Now, civilian life has its own version of external discipline, right? For instance, um, my boss might give me a deadline. Now, the law tells you what not to do. The bills tell you when to pay. When my boss gave me that deadline, that was an external form of discipline where if I don't meet the deadline, then there are going to be consequences, right? Consequences I might not want to deal with. But just like prison, that only goes so far. Because if you only live by what's enforced from the outside, the moment freedom offers you a choice, you might fall apart. I'm not going to make that deadline. I'm not studying that deadline, right? Think about it. Nobody forces you to wake up early out here. Nobody can force me to um, go and do what, try to make that deadline that the boss gave me, right? Nobody forces you to save money instead of spending it. Nobody forces you to keep your word when you promise to show up. That's where self-discipline is over. Freedom is dangerous if you don't have it, because suddenly you realize that no one's watching. And if you haven't learned to watch yourself, you'll start making decisions that cost you jobs, relationships, and opportunities. The truth is, both worlds test you in different ways. Inside, the test is whether you're going to rise above the external discipline and build your own. But on the outside, the test is whether you'll maintain your self discipline without anyone holding you accountable. That's why so many men who look good on paper, on the inside, they come outside and they crumble. You know, you ever heard of what is called, institutionalized? You ever heard somebody say, "Well, institution, he can live inside, but he can't live outside." And that's why some who are overlooked inside thrive the moment they're free. They already built that inner muscle. I think of discipline like a compass. In prison, the system provides the map, but the map changes all the time, right? The system gives the map, but it changes all the time. If you don't have your own compass, you'll get lost. Out here, there's no map at all. It's open space, and the only way to avoid walking in circles is to rely on that compass that you have built. Now, for me, the wake up call, I think for me, the wake up call was realizing that if I wanted freedom to work, I couldn't just depend on external rules. I had to become my own warden. I had to become my own coach, my own accountability partner. That doesn't mean I live rigidly. It just means that I know the difference between what the world requires of me and what I require of myself. And 9 times out of 10, what I require of myself has to be stricter if I want to succeed. So here's the real question I want to pose to the listeners. When no one's watching, who are you? When no one is watching, who are you? You the man or woman who only shows up when the rules say you have to? Or are you the one who shows up because you built the discipline to guide yourself? Because in both prison and civilian life, freedom isn't measured by what the world allows you to do. It is really measured by what you do when you discipline yourself to do it. Okay. Um, Now it takes a little bit of adapting to the unexpected stuff if you have self-discipline. Because if prison teaches you anything, man, is that you can't take tomorrow for granted. You might get killed. You might think you know what the day would look like. We're gonna do the yard at 9. We're gonna go to the chow hall at 11 for lunch. We're gonna go to a class at maybe 2:30. But one small disruption and the whole plan unravels. All of a sudden, a fight breaks out, and suddenly the yard is closed for a whole week or a month. A CO calls in sick, and your program gets canceled, and you can't, go to the meeting because there's nobody in there to watch y'all in the room. A random contraband search sweeps through your door, man. The only thing on your schedule now is sitting on your bunk while they tear through everything you own. right? Or we used to call them like crash dummies. That's what we used to call them. They do something stupid, right? And then got the whole dorm or the whole camp locked down. That unpredictability is a kind of chaos that outsiders rarely understand. Here's the kicker: you still have to find ways to make progress in the middle of it. Because if you let every disruption dictate your mood or your effort, you won't survive, at least not mentally. That's where discipline meets adaptability. Some of the most disciplined people I knew weren't just the ones with strict routines. They were the ones who could adjust when those routines were disrupted. You couldn't hit the weights in the yard? All right, they'll turn the sale into the gym, right? The class got canceled. They'll pull out a book or write a letter instead of wasting the afternoon away. If the phone lines, everybody on the phone, they journal or meditate rather than pace waiting trying to get on the phone. They had learned the art of bending without breaking. That skill, being able to adapt to the unexpected, turns out to be one of the greatest tools for freedom. Because here's the truth: civilian life throws just as many curveballs as prison life. They just look different. Okay? They just look different. Your child waking up with a fever one morning, same morning when you got that deadline at work. The company downsizes and a job you've been relying on just disappears overnight and they lay you off. Your car breaks down when you're already late for work. You get a flat tire or something. And let's not even talk about the way the world can flip upside down without warning. Think pandemics or economic crashes or personal losses. All of that can factor into where you are, and it's a test of what you're made of. If you build discipline without flexibility, you'll snap under this pressure. You will definitely snap. So if you learn to adapt while staying rooted in purpose, you can pivot without losing any momentum. And that's what separates surviving from thriving, right? On this podcast, we always talking about what's behind the bars, what you learn, how the schedule was, and how you can translate that into your real life out here. But at the end of the day, the discipline is going to belong to you. Now, you can play it how you want to, but life will hand you opportunities one after another, and then offer some setbacks to go along with it. The real question is, can you stay consistent in who you are, even when everything else shifts? I'll give you an example. When I came home, I thought I had my routine locked in. I used to wake up early, exercise, start journaling, start looking for jobs. Ended up going back to school, sticking to a plan every single day. But then life happened, right? I got a job, so they interrupted my mornings. I couldn't journal as much. I couldn't exercise at there a lot of time. Um, Family emergency pulled me off my schedule a time or two, and things didn't go according to the plan I had mapped out. At first, I kind of felt my life slipping back into frustration, honestly, like I was losing control. Then I remember what I had practiced in the inside was to pivot, don't panic. If I can't get the workout in at 6 a.m., I can get it in at 6 p.m. If I can't read in the morning, fuck it. I'll read before I go to bed. If I miss one opportunity, I'll find another one. That's the adaptability that discipline is built on. It's not about being loose or careless. It's about being committed to the purpose, not just the method. Now, the method might change, but the purpose, it really never changes. Inside the purpose was survival and growth. Outside the purpose is building a future and staying free. Either way, life is going to test whether you can bend without breaking. Okay. So when people ask me, what prison taught me, I tell them this. Like, first of all, it taught me how to live with structure in chaos. It taught me how to adapt to the unexpected without losing myself. And that skill has carried me further on the outside than almost anything else I learned on the inside. Because the truth is, whether you're locked up or free, life doesn't care about your perfect schedule. Life will always throw something at you. The only question is, will you fold or will you flex? Right? Now, here's that bridge between those two words because, like I said throughout this podcast, and what we say all the time, it's different, different animal, right? It looks different, but it's the same animal. When people talk about the difference between prison life and civilian life, they usually frame it as two completely separate worlds, like oil and water, right? Nothing in common. But the truth is, the thread that ties them together is discipline. How you carry yourself inside often determine how you'll carry yourself outside. And the bridge between those two worlds isn't freedom. It's about self-mastery. Inside you, you learn that discipline is survival. Without it, the days blend into months, the months into years, and before you know it, time has swallowed you whole. You either build structure in the middle of the chaos, or the chaos consumes you. One of the more popular quotes that I always remember when it comes to that, it was Eleanor Roosevelt. She said, "In a world full of chaos and confusion, it's all too easy to make peace with it." On the outside, the same test will happen. Out here, freedom can be overwhelming. Ain't got the CEOs telling you when to go eat or go to sleep, but ain't got the mandatory counts to drag you out of bed, right? They wake you up, confirm your number and your date of birth and all that stuff. Nobody's stopping you from spending your whole paycheck on nonsense. Is out here, right? It's liberating, yes, but it's also dangerous if you haven't developed the discipline to govern yourself. Freedom without discipline is just another kind of prison, one you can't always see. That's why I say discipline is that bridge, right? That's what's going to keep you out here. You built it inside, you can walk across it into freedom and keep building on your life. If you haven't, well, the bridge collapses the moment you step onto it. That's why so many people struggle with reentry. The world expects you to walk in freedom. Like, hey, you better be glad you're out. But if you only live by external rules and never internalize discipline, that freedom gonna feel like some quicksand under your feet. I remember when I had to realize that the routines and habits I built weren't just coping mechanisms; they were basically like training. I was waking up early, doing my workouts, and reading and journaling and reflecting. Those weren't just ways to pass time; they were tools sharpening me for when the time came for me to step back into the free world. Right? I'll be honest with you though, the temptation on the outside is to relax and say, "Hey man, I'm free now. Keep my feet up and watch some TV, turn into the channel I want to turn to, eat what I want to eat. I don't need all that waking up and journaling and stuff no more. I did that just to get out. And for a while, it felt good. I was able to sleep in. I indulged a little bit, started letting some things slide, but then little by little, the chaos crept back in. I started missing deadlines. I started telling people I was going to be there and wasn't. There were many lost opportunities, and before you know it, um, I was slipping again. And that's when I realized discipline is about where I am, about where you wait. It is not about where you are, it's about who you are. That's what I'm trying to say. It's discipline isn't about where you are, it's about who you are. It doesn't matter if you're in a 6x8 or 5-bedroom house. The question is the same. Will you create order in the middle of chaos? Um, Sometimes you just gotta wake up even when no one makes you. It's saving money when no one's checking on your money. It's choosing peace over conflict, focus over distraction. I don't like choosing growth over stagnation. Those choices stack up, family, and eventually they form the foundation of a new life. Now, once you get over it, you're good. You can show the next man coming home that discipline isn't a prison habit, it's a life habit. You can show your kids that structure isn't punishment. It's basically protecting you, son, protecting you, daughter. You can show your community that freedom without direction, you just know it. But freedom with discipline is power. So if you take anything from this conversation, let it be this. Prison may have forced you to practice discipline, but freedom will test whether you truly learned it. And the bridge between those two isn't built by rules or routines. It's built by the daily decision to master yourself. So at the end of the day, discipline about bars and all that kind of stuff. I've said that you got to get a rhythm that's going to keep you balanced, what's going to keep you moving forward, and what keeps you free. That's on both sides of it. Right. So that's it for today's show. Um, this is the Conviction Fiction, where we taking a hard look at how discipline works both behind bars and out here in civilian life. And if you've been listening closely, you probably noticed that the core message isn't about prison at all. It's about life. No matter where you are, discipline is the thread that weaves structure through chaos. It's what allows you to stand steady when everything else feels uncertain. So here's my challenge to you. Whether you've done time or not, examine your routines. Look at the systems you built for yourself. Are they protecting your growth, or are they leaving you vulnerable to chaos? Also ask yourself, what's one habit I can commit to this week that creates order in my life? Maybe it's waking up earlier. Maybe it's journaling. Maybe it's starting to work out again. Maybe it's putting your phone down at dinner and being fully present with your family. Whatever it is, build it, guard it, and let it become part of the foundation you stand on. And also remember this: discipline is about punishment. It's not punishment. It's about freedom. It's about making choices today that set you up for success tomorrow. It's about walking across that bridge from survival to thriving, from incarceration to inspiration. Honestly. If you connected with today's episode and you want to dive deeper, I invite you to pick up a copy of my book, No Turning Back: The Journey Home and the Work Within. In it, I share more of my personal story, the lessons I learned on the inside, and also share some of the stories of some of the guests on our podcast. They talk about the tools they've carried with them on the outside. So it's all about transformation, forgiveness, and building a life that refuses to be defined by the past. So you can find it on Amazon and through the link in my bio. Thank you for listening, for supporting this mission, and for being part of this community that believes in second chances, in resilience, and in rewriting the narrative. Until next time, keep building discipline, keep creating order in your chaos, and keep moving forward, because there really is second chance. Thanks for joining.